David Harper never thought of himself as a hero. To most people in town, he was just that guy, the single dad who worked too many hours at the diner, who often showed up with bags under his eyes, who sometimes paid with coins instead of bills at the checkout counter. Life hadn't been kind to him. His wife had left 2 years earlier, tired of living paycheck to paycheck, tired of responsibility, tired of a man who, in her words, dreamed too small. She left David with nothing but an old pickup truck, a second-hand sofa, and their 5-year-old daughter, Lily. For David, Lily was everything. His reason for getting up, for pushing through the aches in his back and the exhaustion that clawed at him daily. He had learned how to braid her hair from YouTube videos, how to fix her toys with duct tape and glue, how to smile even when the weight of the world pressed down hard. But there were days when the cracks showed. Earlier that very evening, after his double shift at the diner, he stopped at the gas station to pick up milk and bread. He counted out the last of his quarters and nickels, careful not to go over what little cash he had. That's when Officer James Walker had walked in. Walker was everything David wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, always polished in his uniform. He had a reputation for being tough, fearless, but also arrogant. He didn't hide his disdain for people he thought were beneath him. And David, unfortunately, had become his favorite target. Walker smirked when he saw the coins on the counter. "Harper," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the store, still scraping pennies together. "No wonder your wife bailed on you." The cashier looked away uncomfortably. Another customer shifted awkwardly. David's face burned. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself not to respond. He'd learned long ago that feeding Walker's cruelty only gave him more ammunition. He finished paying, gathered his groceries, and walked out, the humiliation sitting like a stone in his chest. But life has a strange way of turning tables. Hours later, walking home along Maple Avenue, David heard it, the rapid, echoing cracks of gunfire. At first he thought he imagined it, but then he saw the flashing lights up ahead. His heart hammered. As he drew closer, he saw a scene that would forever be burned into his memory. A man, wild-eyed and armed, was firing at a police cruiser. And crouched behind that cruiser, bleeding and pinned down, was Officer James Walker. David froze. His every instinct screamed at him to run, to get as far away as possible. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't trained for this. He had Lily to think about. But then he saw the boy. A child, no older than Lily, was trapped in the chaos. Standing frozen on the sidewalk, tears streaming down his face. His little body shook, paralyzed by fear. Walker shouted at the boy to move, but his voice was weak. His arm bled heavily, his gunfire sporadic. The boy couldn't hear, or couldn't bring himself to move. David's chest constricted. He didn't think. He dropped his groceries, milk spilling across the pavement, and sprinted. Bullets sliced the air, but he kept running. Reaching the boy, he scooped him up and dove behind a parked car, covering him with his own body. "You're okay, buddy," David whispered, heart pounding. "I've got you. You're safe." The boy sobbed into his chest, clutching him like a lifeline. David peeked over the hood. That's when he saw Walker slump, hit again, this time in the leg. His gun slipped from his hand. He was exposed, helpless. David's breath caught. Here it was. The man who had mocked him, belittled him, cut him down in front of strangers. The man who had made him feel small and worthless. David could leave him there. He could take the boy and run. Nobody would blame him. But as he looked at Walker, bleeding and vulnerable, another image filled his mind. Lily. What if it were her out there? What if she were in danger, and someone else had the chance to save her but walked away because of pride or anger? The answer was clear. David looked at the boy. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't come out, no matter what." Then he ran again, straight into the line of fire. Bullets screamed past, shattering glass, sparking against metal. Time slowed. His lungs burned, his legs pumped, but his focus was locked on Walker. David lunged, tackling him to the ground, dragging him behind the cruiser. "Stay with me," he shouted, pressing his hands against the wound. Walker groaned, eyes wide with disbelief. Why would you do this?" "Because you're human," David panted, holding pressure on the bleeding leg. "And right now, you need help." The shooter screamed something unintelligible, but his fire slowed as distant sirens grew louder. Backup was arriving. Within minutes, more officers stormed the street. The gunman was subdued, handcuffed, dragged away. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of radios and Walker's ragged breathing. David sat back, blood covering his hands, chest heaving. He glanced at the boy he'd saved. Paramedics were already comforting him, wrapping him in a blanket. Relief washed through David like a wave. Walker turned his head toward him. For the first time, his eyes held no arrogance. No disdain. Just raw gratitude. You saved me, Walker whispered. His voice cracked, almost childlike. After everything I said. After the way I treated you. David shook his head. Didn't matter. His voice was low, steady. You needed help. That's all I saw. Walker's lips trembled, his pride broken. He had no words. Just silence. Paramedics rushed in, lifting him onto a stretcher. Before they wheeled him away, he grabbed David's wrist weakly. I was wrong about you. You're the bravest man I've ever met. I'll never forget this. David gave a small nod, then retrieved his torn grocery bag from the street. The milk was gone, the bread crushed, but he didn't care. All he wanted was to get home to Lily. That night, when he slipped into her room, she was asleep, clutching her worn stuffed bunny. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Daddy's here." Tears filled his eyes as the weight of everything crashed over him. How close he'd come to never seeing her again, how his choice to show compassion had changed more than one life tonight. In the days that followed, word spread quickly. The papers called him a hero. Neighbors who once barely noticed him stopped to shake his hand. And Walker, once his harshest critic, showed up at his door weeks later, walking with a cane, his voice softer than David had ever heard. I owe you more than I can say, Walker admitted. You didn't just save me. You opened my eyes. I judged you without ever knowing you. And I was wrong. David didn't need recognition. He didn't need apologies. But in that moment, he realized something profound. True strength wasn't about proving people wrong, or about pride, or even about being called a hero. It was about showing up when it mattered most. About choosing compassion when hate would be easier. Because in the end, humanity isn't measured by who we save when it's convenient. It's measured by what we're willing to risk for each other, strangers, friends, or even enemies, when everything is on the line. And sometimes, that choice has the power to change hearts forever.